the Robson Valley, I talk about McBride, I run into people from the school district, for example, who are in Prince George and other areas, and I talk about McBride. I make presentations, have made presentations at the UBCM, as Mayor Martin has done. As a matter of fact, I did a presentation a number of years ago about our lagoon system, which was extremely well received at UBCM. I did a presentation just last month on brownfield sites to bring awareness to the unsightly issues of having a gas station that's closed down at the entrance to McBride. And we were questioning how to move forward and make that a better looking entrance to McBride and look for answers from other communities that have dealt with the same issue. We're dealing with BC assessment. And we've come away from UBCM with some good direction moving forward. I know a lot of people around. For example, I just happened to be in McBride, but I was still promoting McBride. I was actually at the Beanery 2. And I walked into the Beanery 2 a couple of weeks ago, and I just happened to run into the Minister of Transportation. I also just happened to be driving my pedicab at the same time, so I made all efforts to get the Minister of Transportation out and get a picture of her beside my pedicab and posted it on my Facebook page, so it spread extensively around the government offices with the Minister standing beside the pedicabs. I'm promoting McBride, whatever I do. When I'm in Prince George, I do the same thing. I too was at the Winter Games, and we just need to talk about the good things that McBride has to offer and share that wealth.
Thanks, Rick. Can you pass the mic all the way down to Danielle? We're going to go to Regional District for a couple of questions. Candidates for Regional District. Are you there, Danielle? You got it? Okay. This is for you, alone. Could you please explain your reasons for not supporting the rezoning of the old MFI mill site to enable a possible silica facility when 90 to 95% of the people at the public forum were in favor of it?
Oh, absolutely, that's an easy one. You know, it wasn't about supporting or not supporting it. It was about making sure that the safety and that the health of the residents in the surrounding area were taken care of. Northern Health mandated that there be a dust and noise control plan, an engineered dust and noise control plan. We communicated that to the proponent and waited, and waited, and waited some more. So it's a matter of balancing the needs of economic development with the health and safety of the people around, and we have to follow the rules just like everyone else does. And maybe in the 70s or the 60s you could fly in and, you know, throw money around and do whatever you wanted. But these days, that's not the way it works. We have to support, again, working within the rules, making sure that those rules are communicated, and expecting people who want to have development to follow them. So it's not about supporting or not supporting. It's about making sure that the rules are followed and that we have responsible economic development that doesn't put the safety of our kids at risk. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thanks. If your mic could go to Gene, we're going to get to him on the next question, but I'm going to give my mic to Ben after I ask the question. For Ben. If there were a public forum regarding a potential industry interested in operating in the Robson Valley, and it passed any environmental assessments, and over 90% of the people were in favor, would you support it?
My first gut answer is yes, but I'd have to know what industry that was. I'd look at it. I want to see more people employed here. If, as a regional director, that industry was beneficial for the region, then I would have to vote in favor of it. Definitely.
Get help with this. Okay, we're going to go back to mayoral candidates. We're going to go through all three for this question. We'll go with Jean, Loran, and then Rick. Here's the question. It's quite long. As mayor and council, how will you deal with the blatant disregard of village bylaws, specifically those dealing with the installation of large derelict transport truck trailers on various properties in residential areas? Also, the blocking of alleys by the storage of vehicles, trailers, junk, firewood, etc. These practices are inconsiderate of and inconvenient of other residents of the area, village equipment, and fire and emergency vehicles that might need access to properties off of these alleys. Jean.
Well, what I do is first talk to the residents that are having the problem in parking the equipment and whatnot. There might be a very valid reason why they're doing it, and it's and maybe you can come up with an alternative, and then do something about it that way. But just to go and say this is the ordinance and you guys can't do this and not know why they're understanding what their problem is, that doesn't work at all. So you got to talk to the people and work it out. Most people, if you talk to them and you're honest with them, they're going to do what's right. If not, you use a hammer at the very last, not at the first.
Okay, I'm assuming that the blatant disregard for bylaws has to do with the CCAN issue. When a bylaw is passed, anybody that has a CCAN before the bylaw passed is non-conforming status, and you can't address it unless, of course, it becomes a safety issue. Bylaws are not enforced by council. That's not our role. Bylaws are enforced by staff. So the way you handle it is if you contact a mayor or a member of council, whichever one is your preference, and then you take the information to the CAO and have the CAO follow up on it. Sometimes this doesn't go as well as planned, other times, but most often it does. We've had reoccurring issues with bylaws that we've had to deal with, and there are always, anytime there is controversy there between public and members of council or with the village itself, it's always a difficult thing to deal with. But you have to trust in your staff because that's what you hired them to do. So when it comes to things like that, you also can't step on their toes because there are employment contracts in place. There are roles and responsibilities that are different between staff and council, and you really have to follow those guidelines. But most people I find are very compliant, and there's usually not a problem. There's usually a way to figure it out, and staff is really good at doing that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Council passes the bylaws. We need to make sure that we write good bylaws. And bylaws are only as good as the paper they're written on, unless you have bylaw enforcement officers who are staff. I think we have some bylaws in the village that should be looked at. I think we have some situations in the village that could be cleaned up. We could look at some good neighbor bylaws. A good neighbor. We do have to work with staff, and we have a good staff, but we don't have anyone really on staff who is designated to go out there and be a bylaw enforcement officer. We rely on our outside staff to do the best they can. I think that most people want to do the right thing, and I think if we work with the community, we can address some of those issues. I'm not sure it's necessarily CCANs. There was a bylaw put in place with that, but there have been a number, as was noted in the question, some transport truck backs, etc., that have arrived in the village at some time. I believe that that's something that council will have to address as we move forward. As far as firewood in the alley, I haven't seen any, but same sort of thing. Good neighbors, keep the place clean, keep McBride looking good. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you pass that one down to Harold? And I'll give Bob mine, because the next question is for our school reps. Thank you. I'll read first, Bob. You get to answer first. As our rep for school district, what will you do to ensure both of our public schools remain open and remain available for school and community activities?
Okay, so the answer to that is I'm not sure what I'll do, but I'm going to do something. We used to use this building for lots of things. And then somewhere, 10 years ago, or maybe a little more, it just became so cumbersome to be allowed to be in the building that a lot of organizations didn't use the building anymore. I know that in Valemount, they have to pay a fee. You have to pay a fee if you want to be using the building. And you also have to pay for a janitor, which is reasonable if you're here on the weekend. But I'd like to see these buildings be used for community events as well as just the day-to-day operations of the school. And now what was the other part of that question?
How will you help them remain available for school and community activities?
Yes, that's a big concern. Again, I don't know what I'll do, but I also know that the idea of consolidating both schools into one building is not a useful answer when you have kindergartners and first graders in the same halls as 12th graders. It's just too big of a separation of age. It's confusing for the little kids and it's frustrating for the older kids. So it also impacts our town economically. It's very difficult to attract young families to our town, which we desperately need to do if we don't have an elementary school. So it's not just about the funding numbers and the budget numbers. We have to find a way to ensure that the elementary school stays open and the senior high stays open as separate identities, and we have access to these buildings as a community.
You're not going to hear much of a different answer from me. I quite agree with Bob on this topic. I remember we used to play basketball in the gym for about 40 years. And we had a key, we'd come in, we'd play ball twice a week. And there was never any problems. And as Bob was saying a few years ago, it became an issue. And so you couldn't get in, and similarly for our theater group, which Bob is a part of the same theater group I'm in, we can't do shows here in this room because it costs too much, and that's too bad. And that's one of the things that either Bob or I would be trying to get to happen again, is having the schools be important local places where people can use them on a regular basis. The one point of difference I would is the consolidation of schools. My problem there is not from an educational point of view. I used to coach basketball, and we would go to lots of different schools around the province, and K-12 can work. I mean, the big kids look after the little kids. It's not the fact that the big kids are somehow a corrupting influence on the little kids, because the big brothers and sisters of the little kids are there too. So to me, that's not the issue. The issue is not having a big gap on Main Street with the elementary school if it were to close. So we need to have it open for, as the council has been talking about, trying to get daycare, other uses for those spaces that we all own as part of the school.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to say to both school district candidates, and this is an opportunity to work with regional district and local elected officials to move forward on this, especially for school access, community school access, that's a community issue, not just a school board issue, and that's something that we all will advocate for together. That's something we can work on absolutely together, and I feel very passionate about that.
Great, thanks. For the candidates for mayor, for all three candidates, if you could pass the mic back down to Rick. We're going to go Rick, Loran, Jean. Same question for all three. The question is two parts. Over the last 4 years, how many chamber meetings have you attended? And the second part is, have you been involved in any chamber events over the last 4 years?
I haven't kept track of chamber events or meetings that I've attended. I know I've attended meetings in Linda's office. Some of them have been specific to trail development and trail work. I have attended a number of events that the chamber has been a part of, curling events that they're passing on to the curling club, other dinners that have gone on. Off the top of my head though, I don't have a number, but yes, I have attended events of the Chamber of Commerce, and I support the work of the Chamber of Commerce in our community.
Pretty much the same answer. I am not appointed, council has an appointed liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, and their job is to bring forward to council's table anything that they feel is necessary that council needs to deal with. I did attend the Chamber After 5 meeting. I have attended, I've often stopped in at the Bonspiel. I don't actually curl because of my schedule. And I trust that when you're on council and you appoint someone to that liaison position, that they will come forward, and you have to be ready for it. The Chamber After 5, I know that there were some people that were upset that we had a quorum of council outside of council talking about different things that could move forward, which probably wasn't appropriate. But you know, you try to do the best that you can with all of the businesses. You try to promote business opportunities you create, and you listen to what the community says. The business walk was really an eye-opener. Most people like their businesses the way they aren't ready to make that next big step yet, but are looking forward to it in the future. So keeping your finger on the pulse of the community, plus trusting in your council members to bring forward issues that need addressing at the council table is basically how you do that. I couldn't tell you how many public events I've attended. There's too many to even note. You know, and everything's done in combination, so sometimes it will be the Chamber and or the Elks. But they do a great deal of work for our community, to better our community. So I think that's something that needs to continue, and you need to have a strong liaison position amongst your council members.
As far as chamber meetings, I've attended none. Last year, with my position at the Community Forest in McBride, we were asked by several of the curling club members if we could assist on putting the loggers bonspiel together, because loggers and community forests, they're pretty much one and the same. So we assisted in that last year and made sure that costs would be covered if wasn't enough people attending, etc. Helped organize it, and then we're doing the same with the club this year, and we stepped in just because of the fact that we want these things to happen. Now, on another side of things, when you talk about the chamber, I believe that the chamber is got to have help, and the whole community needs to help itself with business and opportunities, especially in the forest industry, that are out there right now. What most of you don't know is this forest industry is completely changing. And we have the opportunity here because of the poor wood we have. It's somewhat ironic, but we have great opportunities right now. The one business is looking at it right now. I talk to them every week. But what we should be having is council and chamber also talking to them. And they're not the only ones you talk to. Don't put all your interests in one spot. And I'd like to see I would, if I'm elected, I'm going to put together a committee that's a combination with the chamber and with individuals from this community that can take a look and look ahead. And how do we get industry in here? How do we attract them? How do we talk to them? How do we meet them? And that's key. The jobs are the key to most of the other things that we're talking here tonight. Thank you.
Great, we're going to continue in that same vein for the mayor candidates. We'll go Loran, Jean, and then Rick, all three. What is your vision for the future of the community forest?
Well, my vision for the community forest is that, first of all, there's a lot of work that council needs to do as the shareholder. So is set standards. When we hired BA Blackwell, we really raised the bar on the standards of reporting publicly, and that needs to continue. We also changed how the public meetings, especially the AGM meeting, are presented, and that still needs to continue to be some work. We have one more year left in our down cut, and then it'll be a question as to whether or not we get to go back to the 50,000 cubic meters, or whether or not the LiDAR inventory will actually support that. I would like to see a community forest that is fair, where everybody that wants an opportunity to tender can. I want to see people on the board that aren't all from one industry, and I think that's something council needs to address. We also need to change the structure of the corporation to protect the village, like I said, from financial and environmental liability. I would also like to see the community forest get to the point where it can start giving back to the community again. Because of the downturn and because I had council on the community forest board, one of the first things we did was to not give out dividends. It would have put council members in a position where they could actually be removed from council. So I see it being more vibrant. I am waiting for the LiDAR. We also need to do some fire mitigation because we have 1,500 debris piles that can be used for bio, but in the meantime they stand there, and if there's a lightning strike, we're in trouble. So it would be smarter to deal with it right out of the gate rather than having to deal with it after the fact.
Thanks.
As far as the community forest, the future, where I see the community forest, the future is actually enlarging the community forest. It's a tough community forest to run given the poor quality wood we've got right now. And it's part of the whole thing. And keeping it small. For industry, for our post and rail plants, people have to remember when our old growth cedar expires, so do those plants. So what we're looking at right now is expansion into Prince George East. And there's already been several meetings concerning that. And that is a real chance to do that. When we do that, that's going to be in combination with the Lake Latany. And we can do that in combination with them. So we work hand in hand with the native band, and we increase the amount of poor wood that's coming into McBride. We pay for it by the high quality wood that's now going into Prince George. Okay, that's one of the areas. That's really important. And that will tell us the cut from both those areas, how long we can support these post and rail plants, and at what level. The next thing is we have opportunities here for increasing the amount of wood that goes into small mills here. And the reason I'm saying that is there's a lot of markets have opened up where the big companies don't quite fill them the right way. There's broker firms now available that will help the small guy and help build it up, and we've contacted them, and that's a real possibility here. and we'll help those businesses get started. And like we do with these other businesses here, wood is delivered to them, they pay for it when they use it. Because most of our mills here can't get operational loans, so that's how the community forest covers a lot of things. But we're just started to do things that we can do.
Thanks. And Rick.
I believe that the community forest is on a good path today. I'm glad to hear that they're looking at expansion. I recall that in 2014, 2015, the community forest was on a path to do some major expansion with the purchase of the carrier license. At that point in time, the board of the day decided not to move forward with that. I point to our partners or our neighbors in Valemount who did fulfill their purchase agreement, and I look at the success that they're having today. I think that if we had moved forward with that in 2014-15, we might be on a different path today than we currently are. That being said, the board and management has done well recently to, with those changes, turn things around. I believe that we will continue to work with good advice from lawyers and accountants in the restructuring of the board itself. I want to see an independent, effective board that makes decisions with regard to increasing our use of fiber within the Robson Valley, expanding what we do with the fiber that we do have, bringing more of that fiber that we have mills to process here within the Robson Valley. As Mr. Runson said, bring some of that fiber from the Prince George area this way. The board is making good decisions. I support the growth of the board, and I support the use of the fiber that we've got to increase the jobs in the Robson Valley, keeping in mind that spruce, pine, and fir, SPF, makes 2x4s, and 2x4s are not made in small mills in this province. They're made in large mills, and that's the wood that pays for the other jobs.
Thanks. We're going to go back to Ben and Danielle. So if you could pass the mic all the way down to Danielle, and then I'll give mine to Ben. We're going to start with Ben. You have two different questions. So I'll give Ben your question, and then I'll give Danielle her question. Ben, now that the feds and province have unveiled large infrastructure grants that will pay for things like libraries, will you work with the regional district to secure funding and try to reverse the 25-year tax forced upon us?
That's not a 25-year tax. That's a lifetime tax. And yes, I absolutely will.
Danielle, your question. Our taxes have been raised while you were elected. What have you done to benefit Area H?
Okay, I'm just trying to parse that. Well, we've worked to bring School District 57 representatives to the local school district board. We've worked to support schools, families, and yes, taxes have been raised. It's been unfortunate. Now, we've worked with the transfer station and environmental services, and actually we've lowered taxes there by 2%. The major tax increase that we've seen has been through recreation services and fire and protection. And that's not, a lot of that is because of provincial downloading. They've created new regulations and new requirements and not given us the resources to fund those. Taxes are going to continue to go up. There's nothing that we're all over the place, municipally and regionally, largely because of the services that we're asking for are more expensive now. Now, each individual service has its own tax requisition. So one thing we can do to lower our tax burden is stopping some services. We need to have a community conversation on whether we have to, what services we no longer value, whether it's fire protection or recreation center, or the museum and library, or the TV rebroadcasting. Each of those is a separate line item on your tax bill. So we can work together to lower each individual piece. But again, provincial downloading has caused things to be more expensive. So that's the tax part. I'm running out of time. What have I done to help the valley? Again, all of these things. Created a new granting program, worked with community groups to increase backcountry access, built trails with the backcountry horsemen, worked with various groups to enhance the quality of life and make this a community worth living in. Thank you.
Okay, keep your mic. We're going to stay with you too. You get the first, it's the same question for both. With all the backcountry roads being decommissioned, what is your position on this issue?
Who first? Me first?
Yep.
Okay, I've been working with the chamber in order to keep the backcountry roads open. I sponsored a resolution to UBCM and to Union of British Columbia Municipalities and the North Central Local Governments Association, asking the provincial government to consult with communities and keep key access roads open. I've worked with the Farmers Institute and various backcountry user groups in order to combine a message so that we're sending a positive and coherent message to the provincial government to help keep key backcountry access roads open. We've engaged with emergency services and created not just for tourism, but for trappers and hunters and hikers and for emergency services as well. If we have a fire in the backcountry, how can we put it out if we can't get to it? So this has been a constant thing. I'm working with the chamber right now to keep the last 5 kilometers of the Dora Valley South Road open so that we can continue to access the Eagle Valley and Avalanche Valley trails. It's so incredibly important for our quality of life, for our economic and recreation opportunities, and for tourism. So that's my position on it. I'm working hard on it, and I see some successes, and I'm hoping to see more.
Backcountry access, kind of a prickly issue, isn't it? I'm a director at large with the Robson Valley Fish and Wildlife Club, and I have lived or worked one way or the other in the backcountry for a long time. We want to promote tourism. We want people to come and see our mountains. We want to see wildlife. We don't want to push wildlife out of their natural corridors. Hang on, it sounds like a contradiction. I think if we need to be in an area, we need to keep the road accessible. If we don't need to be, if it's contrary to decent wildlife management practices, then we need to get out of there and stay out. I'm going to be continuing to look at this, and as Daniel said, with all of the levels of government involved and the groups within the community that are involved. I'm trying to manage they call it best practices for our access, for our entertainment, our access for our work, and hunting, fishing, wildfire fighting, that sort of thing, but also staying out of the way of wildlife to let herds recover. It's massively important as well.
So we've allocated to 8:35 for questions for candidates before they wrap up, so that leaves us almost another half an hour. I would like to just continue with all these because we still have quite a number of questions. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Bob and Harold. Start with Harold. Can you grab the mic from Danielle? No, don't grab. That would be a bad school term. Trying to learn school lingo.
I'll take it respectfully.
I'm going to try very hard, Mr. Edwards. Sir. Same question for both of you. How will you help ensure that McBride and the Robson Valley and Robson Valley schools are resilient and sustainable?
The we're in an interesting position right now. The education is in some ways different, in some ways the same. What's different is technology has meant that we have better ways of communicating across distances. And so it's possible for a person to take courses that you wouldn't otherwise be able to take. But what my emphasis is going to be in advocating for our community at the Prince George level is to remember that education is a relationship activity. That if you did, you wouldn't need schools if you could just Google everything. Learning facts is not really that important anymore. You need to know enough facts to create a structure in your mind so that you can fit everything in. But it's not what we're moving into is doing more and more in terms of problem solving, and not just problem solving by individuals, although that's important, but problem solving in groups. It turns out that when industry reports back to the educational systems, they report that the problem is that they don't fire people for not knowing stuff. They fire people for not being able to work together on problems. And so that's the sort of thing that I would be pushing for at the regional district, or the school district 57 level.
Well, give me my mic.
So he looked at my paper, so he knew what I was going to say. He did that last night. My answer would be very similar. Teaching children how to think critically is important.